Hey, here we are. We are on today with the Morgile and our Patricia, our lovely Patricia. So, hello, guys.
Hey, hello.
I don't think people realise that nobody really has rights anymore. I mean, they always think that the English have the biggest and the best, but we don't. We're so censored. So censored. There is no freedom of. And they what they did a few years ago was because obviously they decided that with slavery that they'd stick something in the Slavery Act, but it doesn't talk about the people's welfare, money, care, education, and all that. It's just this law saying you can't really ask anybody to help you anymore. If I ask you to help me here, then you could actually ring the police up on me, and it's been put in the Slavery Act. It's nothing to do, neither one are to do with each other, but really they've got that act in now, and it's law. Isn't that
And
terrible?
I
Like,
think,
it's
and I
terrible.
think the key, and I think the key, I think the key thing to the whole slavery aspect is if it's voluntary. Like if you ask me to help you with something, and I voluntarily do it, and don't ask for anything in return, that's fine. But the problem is when if you ask me or you basically demand and force me with threat of violence to help you with something without compensation for my time, that would be slavery. And unfortunately, the whole modern system is set up to make everybody that participates in that system not only a slave, but a slave to help create an even more robust and effective system to enslave future generations. So yeah, it's pretty messed up and abysmal.
It is, but I'm saying, like you only realise that nothing works properly when you have to use it. If you can go through life without using it, like benefits or going to the doctor, whatever it is, once you have to start like trying to get through it, it's just an absolute nightmare. None of it works.
Yeah, I mean, for my wife, like it took her almost 5 years to get disability, which she did end up finally getting. Which is something that we pay into with our taxes every time you get a paycheck here. It comes right out of your paycheck. Social Security, disability insurance, it comes right out. But when it's time to actually take advantage of that public benefit, as they say, yeah, they make it very difficult, and in fact, it is their policy to deny everyone, regardless of their injury or the validity of their claim. And so, yeah, I mean that's the problem with socialism, and it's the problem with bureaucracies in general. That yeah, they're quick to snatch up the public's money, but they're
John, you mean the globe life? You mean that life, the globe life? It's all set up,
yeah.
isn't it, that way? Ego, and I mean, I said this on a hangout yesterday, or the day when we did have our last hangout, Patricia, day before yesterday, or Monday was it? Anyway, basically, money should have just been a medium to buy things, but it isn't. Money's now the king and the power, and if you haven't got money, nobody likes you. If you've got money, you're in. If you've got money, people respect you, and instead of respecting the people, they just respect a medium. And that's really sad because now people are not very important. We're just like sheep or herded, or it's horrible how we're treated. I think just the way it all is, I'm sorry, we're just one big experiment in someone else's game as well.
The way that it usually goes too, isn't it kind of ironic that the people who center their lives around getting themselves rich are usually not very good people? Like if you're so shallow as to value dollars over people, then yes, you're a good capitalist. Although, people in general tend to respect people with money more so than those without. But in fact, it should be vice versa. Like, money is not that important to me, other than yeah, we have to have it to pay our bills and to survive, but it's not like I revolve my life around it. I guess if I was very shallow and superficial and very greedy, and yes, I probably could have accumulated much more material wealth than I have right now, which ain't much. However, what is the cost of that? You must sort of sacrifice a bit of your soul or a bit of your humanity. And capital. I just don't make a good capitalist. Like, I don't know if I pick blueberries or apples.
Yeah, I know what you mean. For some reason, I'm not rich, but I'm richer in different ways. I'm richer in my spirit. I'm richer in my mind. I'm richer in my heart. And those are the things that are just as important, because I know we need a roof and we need money to buy things. I know I work really hard today, okay? And I stayed up late doing videos and I'm just knackered. But I just wish that people understood that the most important thing is the people, because without the people you don't have anything, and it's how you're breeding these people and what you're putting in their brains. And now we're really narcissistic and we think, well, I'll only help you if I am getting something. I can't help you because I care about you and love you or like you or whatever. I'm only doing it because I'm going to get something out of it. And this narcissistic society, it's very bad at the moment. I think it needs to explode and start again.
Probably wouldn't be such a bad thing. Although, yeah, I mean, I think in order to move forward in a logical sort of way, yeah, we're going to have to take a few steps back. But like, the whole fiat currency thing, and it's kind of funny because I just put out another chapter of The Creature from Jekyll Island, which is all about that. But yeah, the whole fiat currency situation, basically, it it is the crux of how we've become slaves in a so-called free country without slaves. And so I don't know.
Unfortunately, it's a bit like we've sleepwalked into it, because I haven't spoken to you in ages, John, and my other channel's a bit more to do with crime, or that's what it was, but I've got this one case and I can't get off of it. But it's just, they've got people hooked onto cases. It's just the whole way I see it bigger now. Like, I thought it was bad enough, and accidentally we could have got to some of these places, but it's not. We are pounded 24 hours a day, 7 days a week with this crap. So basically it's probably better to walk out of it, because in it you're just facing 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, bombarded with all this stuff that none of it's true.
I agree. I mean, I'm to the point to where if the mainstream media outlets publicize something to such a degree that they do, then I'm instantly suspicious, because from personal experience, I know that actual important things like, for example, cures for cancer or the Federal Reserve System is a scam, or really important things that lots of people are shouting from the rooftops, never get a second of coverage from the media. But the really divisive and sort of silly things and the stupid things that don't make a real big difference in the grand scheme of things are, they're telegraphed from the mainstream media. And so to me, if the mainstream media is telegraphing something, then instantly my guard's up and I'm pretty much incredulous. It's going to take some convincing to get me to think.
I think we have to find out who's in control of the media, because then you know who's doing it all.
In the United States, there's 5 companies, that basically own all of the mass media. So that's TV stations, magazines, radios. And I don't know if that bleeds over to where you guys are at, but it's like Disney, Viacom, Time Warner. There's a couple others, whatever. And maybe some of them have merged since my last investigation into it. But that's a big problem, because
Yeah, what it is, John, we've seen the videos which basically show the newsreaders. There might be like, just say, for instance, there's a certain word they're all saying it. So just say uptown, downtown, but they've got to say those, they'll all say it. All of them, all the news stations will say exactly those same words.
Of course, you can find so-called competitive news organizations. So like Fox or MSNBC, that's pretty much the dichotomy. That's a big dichotomy here. You'll find plenty of instances where the newscasters on these so-called opposing channels will have verbatim entire stories. It's not just a word or two, it's entire stories that are verbatim, like they were definitely written by the same person. And so it's just laughable that people are still brainwashed into believing that, there is somehow
I see it even worse than that. It's by accident through this case, okay? Basically, I can't remember her second name. I'm too tired, everybody. Sorry. But her name's Amber something or other. In 2012 or 13, this was. She went over. She was an independent reporter for CNN. And she went, well, I suppose maybe they're all independent, but anyway, she went over to Bahrain, made this documentary. Obviously, there were some things there she didn't like and she wanted to report on. And when she came home, uploading her video, whatever it is, here it is, they said, oh, no, you can't have that on there. And of course, then by the time I'm watching it, she's now talking to other people, basically saying, look, what happens is These countries, all of them, they pay the Americans, whoever, whichever news ones, to make the news. So make the news that we're happy, make the news that we're at war, make the news that... So it's all simulated, it's all lies, it's all horrible.
Amber Lyon that you're talking about, familiar with her? Yeah, Amber Lyon in Bahrain. Yeah. And that was very telling. And she was fired. Was it CNN? Maybe. I guess you're probably right, but whatever. It's irrelevant. She was fired because at the time that she was doing this story exposing really severe tyranny from the Bahrain government to its own people, at the very same time, the Bahrain government was paying her, the news organization that she worked for, to basically create an infomercial to boost tourism in Bahrain, as if it were a news story. And they don't even tell you that this is a paid advertisement by the Bahraini government. They just present it as if it's news that they came up with on their own volition. So there was a conflict of interest between the truth that Amber Lyon snuffed out while she was over there and this narrative that the media wanted to push or was being paid to push. And so, of course, she got the axe, and she was pretty vocal about it. And, I remember years ago.
Also stated that this had come, a lot of this had now come because Obama changed the law that the media could... I mean, we know they were lying because you've got the national anthem with all those subliminal messages. If you had it, we had it. We talk a lot to you and we're watching more of your stuff because of the crime stuff and everything. But if you've got it, we've got it. But they were saying those things to... Did you know that? If you slow down your national anthem, or that's what someone did, and these words come up like, government is God, rebellion is not tolerated, basically consume, use, consume, and obey. And that's what it said in the national anthem. That was in the 60s.
So strange about that is I remember a time when the television stations did not air 24 hours. And, that lasted a few years into my early years, but they would sign off at the end of the night at like 11 or 12 or whatever. And that pretty much all the stations played this sort of generic national anthem, where they had the words of the national anthem displayed on screen. But as those words were being sort of wiped out, faded out so that the next set of words could be displayed, they had these little subliminal messages where, how many people saw that over and over again? That's the thing about subliminal messages. It doesn't necessarily work very well if you just are exposed to that once or twice.
I was a bit concerned, rebellion is not tolerated. Rebellion is not tolerated. Obey, consume, just like the film, when he takes his glasses off. And then government is God. Government is not God.
It does appear that sort of a mantra has stuck with a lot of people because, if you watch something like that every night for 10 years, maybe it'll seep in a little bit. Why else would they...
Yeah, that's what I was saying, that we're just one great big experiment in someone else's game.
If you start looking into subliminal messaging, people will sort of poo-poo it, and they give you this anecdote about this guy who owned a movie theater, and in the middle of a movie, he flashed a frame or two of buy Coca-Cola or eat popcorn. And according to this guy, the sales of Coca-Cola and popcorn skyrocketed up in his particular theater when he did this. Now they say that was a hoax. However, when you look at for example, the amount of money that's spent on a Super Bowl commercial, they spend tens of millions of dollars for a 15 or a 30-second ad during the Super Bowl. And to say that sort of getting into people's heads with subliminals or even very either covert or overt advertisement doesn't work and is a waste of time is just absurd. I mean, why would these super successful corporations just throw gobs and gobs of money away at advertising if it didn't work?
I think it happens because I remember we were watching a film once and we slowed it down and we could see the same thing. Suddenly this image comes up just for a second. This is what I'm finding on the Watts case. Just for a second. There's these things. But what it is on this sort of deepfake stuff, when people sort of talk about when they manipulate videos and that, they say slow it down because they cannot cover up all the mistakes. There's going to be mistakes in there. Thank God there's mistakes so you can see them, so you know for sure that it's not real.
The thing is, so the human eye and mind sees in about 28 frames per second. So any less, so say half that, 14 frames per second of an animation will look very choppy. 28 frames per second will look like a good animation, although 1,000 frames per second doesn't look much better than the 28 frames per second, right? So the question becomes then, why are they making all of the new digital televisions at hundreds of frames per second if it really doesn't make a difference to what we perceive and what we see? Unless you start to realize, well, wait a minute, that means they've got 80 frames in a second that they could potentially be, seeding our minds with ideas that they want us to have at a later point. And yeah, the national anthem on sign off on those old television sign offs is a really good example of the sort of things that they do. Although I think in our sort of modern era, they've come a long way. I mean, things that they push, they also have very overt things that they push with their narratives, and it's to manipulate people's minds. It is indeed a form of mind control.
Do you know what? This is what they did here. They do it all, and people don't even realise what the adverts are doing. But for instance, someone was talking about it. They were laughing about it because they were saying, "Look, they're showing you that new television and how wonderful it is on your television." And then, of course, it makes people go and buy it. But he said, "Why do you need to buy it if it looked good on your television?" But you see, the psychology is, "Oh, I need one of those. I've got to go and buy a new one." But if it looked okay on your telly, why did you need a new one? And that's the psychology they've got us at. Oh, look, that through your television that you're watching looks so much better, but it's on your telly. Consume, consume, consume. See, consume.
So, I mean, look at where they take it though. They're not just trying to sell us things. They try to sell us on ideas. So, like for example, this whole kerfuffle with well, I call her Greta Storm Turds, but I think it's Greta Thunberg. Um, Basically calling us the children are striking from school. Like, wow, why didn't I think of that when I was skipping class? But yeah, they're striking from school to basically go and preach about climate change when in fact, everybody knows that this generation has the largest carbon footprint of any in the past, and they're basically wanting people to do something about climate change. And what that boils down to is they want the government to tax people more, and that is what it boils down to. And they use these.
Do you know what? If they really, really, really were thinking about the environment, we'd have had some kind of electric car by now, especially as we had it at least 100 years ago until they destroyed our infrastructures. And then when we come out of that, we've got petrol and oil, the TV, etc., etc., etc. But,
Right.
like, if they're really caring about the environment, I mean, right now, there's this sort of rumour that diesel's going to be taken away. But diesel, you get more to the gallon. And I don't know, I like diesel cars. But now, if you go to petrol, you get less to your gallon, but it's worse for the environment. Like, they don't care. They're just making it worse for them. They're making it because you have to consume it. Like, if they really cared, we'd be in electric cars, wouldn't we?
Invented in the 1800s and was designed to run on peanut oil, right? And even I believe it was Henry Ford designed a car entirely out of hemp that ran on hemp-based gasoline. And so now the whole shtick is that, oh, we need to find alternative energy sources. We can't stay on petroleum forever. But it's ridiculous, because if they were actually trying to find alternative energy sources, then we could have been running diesel engines on peanut oil for the last 150 years. So the concept that people are trying to save the environment is absurd. And in fact, the elephant in the living room is the fact that the United States dollar is backed by nothing except for petroleum worldwide. So that's where you get this term petrodollar. And so there's a vested interest for the elites to keep everybody addicted to petroleum. There is no interest in them allowing us to have free energy or natural fuel sources. And so, this whole thing with Greta Storm Turds is, it's media manipulation at its finest. And I mean, she's turned into one hell of a meme pretty much overnight, though, hasn't she?
It is so sad though, isn't it? Because they're always pointing the finger at us, but the reason we've got it is because of them. Double whammy for the people.
Exactly. And then using children in this psychological battle against us. I mean, that is the depth of depravity, isn't it? Like using children to get into our heads and make a wow. I mean, just think about that for a second. Let that sink in that this is mind control. They're trying to sway public opinion en masse by pulling on people's heartstrings through the television. So, uh,
Yes, that is exactly the answer for this case I've been trying to tell you about, the Watts case. That's exactly what they've done for that one. It's not just that one though, it's all cases, but with the Watts case, they've given us everything. No, they haven't given us everything, but in a sense, the public feel like they've had everything. We've had their autopsies, we've had the discovery document, we've had everything from the discovery document, and we've had video upon video from their personal life. It's been all over the news. It's like consuming people's lives. Until that day when someone kept going on about, oh, he had a mistress, she was helping him on the drive take the bodies of the children out. And since then, we learned the children didn't die at the house. He killed them afterwards. Yeah, everybody was convinced, we were all convinced he was dragging the bodies out, but I didn't see that. I saw children coming out. And at one point, there was 3 Chris Watts on the drive. And what it was is, Patricia was the one, I'm not saying she was maybe the only one, but she suddenly went, Karen, look, the discovery document says that he was there for 10 minutes, but we get an hour. We get a video for an hour. And not just that, it's dark and the sun is just about to pop there. You know, like we go through this whole hour of time, and yet the discovery document said he was there for 10 minutes, and it goes on and on. And when I started looking into that drive footage, it just blew my mind. I made, 20 videos on it.
you know, when you find discrepancies like that in official narratives, it makes it fairly obvious to anyone that wow, these people are up to some. Like there's some shenanigans going on here. But if you bring that to light and talk about it in a public forum, then of course you're labeled as a crazy conspiracy theorist. And really though, this sort of thing, with these high profile
What, for questioning what they're doing to us or seeing through the veil?
only do you have people distracted with really something of no consequence that seems to be fabricated, at least in some degree, but also when you focus on these sort of murder mysteries, and there's a lot of shows like CSI and New Detectives and such, where people that consistently watch these murder mystery shows become very paranoid people. And studies have shown, and I don't know the numbers, but I looked into it, that people who watch a lot of these sort of murder mystery things on TV have a false sense of how dangerous the world actually is, or how dangerous people are. Like they believe that crime rates are thousands of percent higher than they actually are. Because, if you watch CSI or whatever for a marathon, God, man, it seems like everybody's out to kill you. You need to be setting up alibis everywhere. And, it's like your buddy calls you over to his house. It's like,
Yeah, they sort of romanticize. Hey, let's get home to watch the police, the criminal story. People can't wait to get home to watch it, and they're excited to watch a romantic version of death and whatever.
you're gonna leave fucking skin cells everywhere, and who knows, right? Later on down the road. So it is, it is adept and advanced mind control.
Do you know what? That's one of the saddest things, and it took me even a while, John, on this case, because I wasn't expecting, like I told you, we know what they're doing now with even from the national anthem, but I wasn't expecting to see it in every single thing we watched. But this one day I realised they were supposed to be taking these sheets from this house. And what it was is, as they were going off to be forensically tested and everything, all the police officers had on were black plastic gloves. They didn't have white covers on or anything, because, they can then pass their DNA on, can't they? Like hairs fall out, like you said, skin. But for that reason, these officers should now have been in white, forensic things, and they weren't. They were just walking around picking the sheets up with what plastic gloves on. Yeah. What I mean is the narrative of it's a bit like, when they told us with 9/11 we went to war in the Middle East to find out that Saddam and Libyan, their country was in a much nicer way than we were. They had running water, education, medication. They weren't bankrupt. These places were sort of sporting 5-star hotels for holiday complexes. They were doing great. So they were the baddies. We had to kill them all off, and then we learned actually they weren't. We're the baddies. That's what I mean. Like we all think. You imagine how many people when those buildings came down. Yes, let's kill them. They've made us hate a race of people for nothing because they didn't do it. It's all a lie. Those are the things. So it did happen. Those buildings did come down, didn't they? People did die, but not for the reasons that you thought.
I saw a survey that was done recently where I think it was more than half of the people surveyed had no idea that Building 7 came down on that day. And
Yeah, do you know what? You Americans talk about that a lot. Those that are awake will realise that, you see, we obviously saw it quite a lot on Sky News with that BBC reporter standing in front of a building she says is dropped, is still there for her or whatever, because they were the wrong timing. So we've seen that more or less from the beginning when it happened. But they didn't tell you, did they, about this? Do you see what I mean? The Americans don't know. Isn't that weird? And the Americans don't really know about Building 7.
well, I heard about that, and the way that they sort of snaked out of it was they said that what was behind her, or like it was pre-recorded, and she was talking over the recording of the tower coming down. Even though it was aired before the tower actually came down, they sort of did a little Jedi mind trick to worm their way out of it in terms of the American people, because a lot of people actually saw that, and it wasn't just one channel, but they claimed that the tower was falling. It was like 15 minutes before it actually did.
Hey, do you know something? I spent years of my life looking at that, and then with my knowledge now about how they completely lied to us in footage, what I did was I slowed down some of the footage of the building coming down, and I never saw it before, even though I knew that it wasn't the way they said and so forth. You can actually see on the footage that the building, with the antenna, there's a big like in Building 7 where the top of the roof suddenly does a ripple as if somebody's running their hands across a piano. You see, and then the building goes ding 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 ding, and then it drops. Well, that's what happened on that's what you were seeing on Building 7. You were seeing that. You were seeing this. And on the Twin Towers. You were seeing it on the Twin Towers the same. The rippling effect happened. The antenna started to go, and I realised that I was watching that Twin Tower actually collapsing from the top down. Right from the top. It collapsed from the roof down. Not where the supposed plane went in. Not that bit there did it. It actually started collapsing from the very top down.
Yeah, with no resistance. I mean, the evidence there is staggering, that it must have been, it had to have been a controlled demolition. I mean, steel structured, reinforced steel structures do not just fall down into their own footprint because of even a large airplane hit. Now, Tower 7 is a horse of a different color because it wasn't even hit by anything. It just had some office fires. And of course, it came down free fall speed, landed in its own footprint, controlled demolition all day long. And yet, 20 years later, almost 20 years later, there's still people out there who will argue with you when you say there's something wrong with this official narrative. And, like I said, half of them don't even realize that three reinforced steel frame structures came down that day, and only two of them were hit.
Do you know what? It's even worse than that, really, John. It's worse than that because of that day, and because of the damage, the whole 7 buildings went that day. The whole complex went. So it's not even Building 7. It's everything was so damaged that the whole thing had to be knocked down. So they got rid of the whole complex that day. But not any of the other buildings. None of the other buildings. They still stood.
Well, and it gets crazy because you look at the synchronicities with, and of course the Building 7 had I believe it was the CIA's command center for New York at the very top, and so isn't that kind of a coincidence and very convenient for the CIA that if there was any sort of evidence of them choreographing this whole thing, which is a possibility, it was all destroyed in the first time ever that a steel frame structure comes down because of office fires. Huh?
There was a court case waiting to happen with one of the electricity companies. There was more. All these cases, every bit of the information got destroyed because it was in that building.
Yeah, interesting. Well, then of course you have all of the insider trading signatures with the stock market, where people were basically buying insurance against their stocks doing poorly, and the sales of this sort of default, it's called, whatever it's called, default, or I forget the term, but it's basically insurance on your existing stocks. The sales for that sort of interest like went up thousands of percentage points the day before or the weeks leading up to it, which is, it proves that there was advanced knowledge that this was going to happen by insiders. A few people profited from it greatly, and most everybody got the shaft. But like, the whole thing is, again, anything, as I said before, anything that the media is pushing out front and center, um, automatically now my guard goes up. I'm skeptical because they have a narrative they want to push, and usually it involves at least some degree of deception, if not, complete fabrication on their part.
It's awful, isn't it,
Yeah.
when you know the truth? But I'd still rather be awake and know the truth than not, because, like I said, it was like watching that advert when they're telling you that that television's really good when you buy it, but it was looking good on yours and you didn't realise it.
The whole project for a new American century thing. Are you familiar with that? Well, going back to the whole Twin Towers thing, are you familiar with the project for a new American century aspect of it? Okay, so Project for a New American Century was like a neo-Republican, neo-conservative think tank that was run by like Paul Wolfowitz, I believe Henry Kissinger, all the Bush cronies that ended up, staffing his cabinet basically. Well, it was a couple years before 2001 happened. They had basically wrote in a document entitled "Rebuilding America's Defenses" that they wanted a catalyzing event that would catapult America into the next phase of their basically war domineering plans, like a new Pearl Harbor. And it wasn't just a shoot. Yeah, a few short months after W. Bush gets into office, we get exactly what they sort of were begging the universe for prior to them getting into office. So, it screams of premeditation. It's evident that at least some elements of the United States government were implicitly involved, not only in the actual event, but also making sure that NORAD or the our air defense systems were offline that day. I mean, it is just so many different aspects of it that it really, I wouldn't even call it circumstantial evidence. I would call it legitimate, actual evidence. But just so many instances of
The planes are going in. In your brain! Yeah, how many of us, I know there's young people maybe going to listen to this that don't remember it, but anybody that does, remember time after time, day after day, these planes going into the building, they replayed it, replayed it, replayed it, replayed it.
yeah, well, and now, it even appears that there probably may have not even been any planes that day. Like, I used to think that that was ridiculous because I saw the planes on TV, right? But now I've looked into it more over the years, and I can tell you, I'm pretty sure that there probably weren't even any planes that flew into that building that day.
Yeah, same sort of thing as they've done with this Watts case. They're just playing and it's all a game. I mean, if you only got to go to Pilots for Truth, they will tell you that you cannot fly a plane basically at sea level at nearly 600 miles an hour because of the air density. Right. You just cannot do it. And then what they did was, even though I don't know if these pilots had actually passed their tests, but they were training, but each one had done many hours of training, so they hadn't just picked someone from, who'd only done a couple of hours. They picked experienced, almost ready to pass their test people. None of them, not one of them, could hit the Twin Towers. Not one of them. The only way they could get the plane to hit the Twin Towers in the simulator was to put it at landing speed, which is what, 30 miles an hour? 40 miles an hour? How fast do you think planes are when they take off? How fast do you think they go?
When they take off or when they land? Uh, maybe like 100. I don't know. I mean, that's just
Like a plane, say, that's got propellers but seats 100, they go about 80 miles an hour, and then the bigger planes, 100. But that's not fast, is it? It's not that fast.
yeah.
No, not at all.
It makes you feel like you're going to be taking off in a jet, like the noise and everything. It's 100 miles an hour.
Well, and the thing is, though, historically, these people that get into power and pull stunts like this, because there have been conspiracies throughout history. That's one of the elements of warfare is deception, right? And so you look at things like the Gulf of Tonkin incident that got America into the Vietnam conflict. I mean, it's just there's tons of them. Um, but historically, what happens is, as long as they can get away with it at the time and woo the public into consenting, manufacturing public consent for what they're doing, it really doesn't matter to them if 15, 20, 25 years later they get caught, because, well, nothing ever happens to them. So they're sort of acting with impunity.
Hey, John, do you know anything about like green
with
screening and
impunity.
stuff like that? Because I'm very shocked that a lot of these people, you just slow their footage down and you can see they're all wearing glasses which do not appear when it's playing at full speed. When it's playing at normal speed, you don't see them, but when you slow the footage down, you do. But you won't believe it. I even saw President Kennedy in glasses. Yeah, they could almost look like what you're wearing in your picture, but they're for other reasons. They're other kind of glasses. And the restraint, what I'm trying to tell you is, you slow the footage down, you can see these people, they've all got glasses on, even back to the 60s. So what are they doing? Hologramming? Virtual reality? What is all this? It's been going on for years. That's what I mean. Even President Kennedy. I've got a video on my channel on this.
I've never I've never seen that, but I'm not saying it isn't so, but I can't comment on something that I haven't seen. But I wouldn't be surprised. Who knows? I would say that it's about, is the information that you are reporting good information or bad information? And that's not really a subjective thing. I mean, it can be in certain shades of it, but really, is the information that I'm putting out there good or bad? If you think it's bad and it doesn't resonate with you, then don't watch it. Go away. But if it does resonate with you, then we've made a connection and mission accomplished. But to judge people's information on how they look.
This waking up, we're still at the talking stage. There's nothing in place to take anything over. We're still in that global life and we're still at the talking stage. So that's where we are. And I thought we were supposed to be making communities.
Well, let me put it in perspective this way. Okay, here in America, they've been poisoning our water with fluoride for decades. Okay, and lots of people know about it, and lots of people are vocal about it. You won't hear shit about it on the news, of course. This is just in underground sort of channels, right? But if we can't even get them to stop poisoning our water, I don't even know if there is an end game other than trying to wake as many people up as we can along the way. You know what I mean? Because to have delusions of grandeur.
Yeah, because once the consciousness changes, once the conscious, I mean, it's a bit hard for us where we are now to think, listen, this is what has to happen, everybody. You just do not vote. If everybody stopped voting, they'd have no power at all.
Well, I don't know about that, because I believe that they could just fabricate numbers anyway.
Oh, yeah, that's true. But you know what I mean, though? Suddenly the polling thing and nobody was voting and everybody, it's like turning your back on them. You have to sort of, it's like turning that television off and then going and doing something else.
Well, a lot of people that are in the so-called truth community fell for the whole Trump debacle, right? Like Trump is the people of the man, the man of the people, and he's gonna drain the swamp when the motherfucker is the swamp. Excuse my language. But okay, so you have truthers that are coming out and promoting Trump as he's the people's candidate. But I'm sorry, anyone that is put on a pedestal by this mass media corporations cannot be trusted. And anyone who runs for a public office who is not running against the Federal Reserve, for starters, they're either complicit or they are inept, and neither one is going to represent me. So, the idea that
Do you know what I think onto that with what you were saying, right? Because I realise now that everything we watch is a lie on the television, everything, the news, everything. The biggest thing that Trump could have done for everybody was to reverse Obama's law about lying to us. And then if there's supposed to be these public, like these people have been arrested, ex-presidents and all that bit, why not is this not done publicly? If it was real, it'd be done publicly. It's been done privately. It's been done just like before. So we're never going to know what's really going on. And is it really going on? And is it just another game?
But it never ends though, because Obama was elected running basically against the Bush administration and their tyranny, and he made claims that he was going to investigate into 9/11 and he was going to do this, that, and the other. All he did was basically accelerate the same exact policies that Bush had put into place. Before Bush, you had Clinton, and Clinton was governor in Arkansas during the time when the CIA and the DEA were importing cocaine, heroin, and marijuana into Arkansas with the governor's approval, it appears, and exporting guns out to the Contras. And so, if you keep going back to these presidents, it's just absurd, and it's so obvious that these people.
Do you know what's really weird as well, John? You look back at it, everybody laughed at Reagan, and he was probably the last best president you've ever had. Well, I mean is, he's not part of this game thing. It was when Bush Sr. came and nobody noticed that he's going one world order.
Yeah, no, I mean, in my book, Reagan was a puppet just like all of them. They put the puppet on the string, and which puppet do you like better, the red one or the blue one? But the puppet master is the same in both cases. It's two wings of the same beast. And they use this false dichotomy to mind control people into thinking that we have a choice, when it's like, would you rather be eaten by a lion or a den of wolves? You know what I mean? At the end of the day, it doesn't make a difference. Like, you're still going to be dinner.
I'm never voting again. I bet you haven't even voted, but I'm never voting again.
No, I don't vote. Hell no. Because I don't want that on my conscience. I'm not going to participate in a system that is set up to enslave us. Why would I ever do that? And so, like you said, I mean, I can decide not to vote, and you can decide not to vote. But if everybody fails to decide not to vote, then basically, we are we're it's not going to nothing's ever going to change. We are just going to be under the boot of this tyrannical government that it's got to go, man. Like, I don't think that not voting is the answer. I don't know. I mean, this may sound a bit harsh, but people, Bush and Cheney and Wolfowitz. Okay, what if they strung up George W. Bush publicly and hung him on television? Do you think that might deter future politicians from going that way? You know what I mean? Like, there was a day and age where if a leader did the sorts of things that the Bush administration did, the Obama administration did, this administration is doing, and I better not talk about the current president that way, but they would be lined up and shot. Okay, and that may deter people from going that direction later on. But the problem is the entire system is set up to promote these people, to prevent them, essentially make them untouchable, to the point to where, like, I don't know, maybe some sort of a natural catastrophe has to happen before we can get a toehold back on this slippery slope. You know what I mean? Well, and I don't condone violence of any sort. However, if you have a legal system that's set up to, I don't know, that's set up to take advantage of people and put people in prison for victimless crimes. However, on the other end of that, you have elitists that are literally getting away with stealing our wealth and sending our troops overseas to die in foreign entanglements, which is against the Constitution, by the way. To not line them up and shoot them is just going to ensure that more people like them will get into office later.
It's like everything is wrong, isn't it? It's like we're in the wrong parody. I mean, a lot of Americans don't even realise that they've got two flags, and actually, they've probably, what is it? They've only flown the peacetime flag once. The flag that's flying now is the wartime flag. So America has always been at war. I'm not saying we're not the same somewhere along the way, but I'm just saying that was a bit of a shock, wasn't it? Like, wow, what is going on here?
So
Nobody
what does the
knows.
peacetime flag look like? Because I've never seen of it. I've
Oh,
never
well,
seen it
in the
before.
videos I saw it,
So
it's
what does the
like,
peacetime flag
like
look
you've got
like?
the
Because I've
dark red
never
and the
seen of
dark
it.
blue. This
I've never
one's
seen it
light
or heard of
blue,
it.
and like the colour is light red. It's like not pink, but everything's pastel colour.
Right?
It's got a different border on it. But again, how do we know? But
Oh,
that's
but
what
it's still the
circled,
same
wasn't it?
sort
There's
of
story
design.
about the flags. It's like, oh my goodness. But then, like, what about last January with those nuclear alerts to Hawaii and Japan? That's pretty damn nasty.
So, like, yeah, well, so we're talking about like nuclear power or nuclear bombs. I am not aware.
Nuclear
Just that,
bombs.
how could, when we
Yeah,
know
well,
that
so we're
that's not
talking
the way
about
that
like
they've told us
nuclear
even on that.
power
Imagine
or
how it made
nuclear
those
bombs.
people, all
I
those people in
am
those
not aware.
countries who got that. Oh, guess
100%
what? And then they
certain.
didn't talk about it
Well,
afterwards. Like, these things
from
must have
my point of
detonated
view,
somewhere,
I'm
but
100%
nobody talks
certain.
about it.
Well, and from my point of view, I'm 100% certain. Well, I'm 100% certain that nuclear bombs do not exist. They never have, never will. Nuclear power is a misnomer. It is part of the same thing to deceive us into making nuclear bombs more plausible. But the idea of splitting a hypothetical atom
What,
to
like going
deceive
to
us
space,
into
you
making
mean?
nuclear bombs more plausible. But
Okay.
the
Like
idea
going to
of
space,
splitting a
you mean?
hypothetical, yeah, well, absolutely. If you look at the propaganda that was foisted upon the people to convince everyone of nuclear bombs, it's ridiculous. By today's standards, you can clearly tell that they're using models. Sure, the military can put hundreds of tons of dynamite at a certain location and detonate it at once, making a mushroom cloud explosion. But you cannot put, there's no sort of a bomb, a single, bomb that fits on an aircraft that is going to create such a blast. It is propaganda. It is theoretical. As far as I'm concerned, atoms don't even exist in the way that we're taught. So, yeah, of course. Now, nuclear energy, on the other hand, that is something that is real, but it is a misnomer. Basically, what they're doing is they're taking a radioactive isotope, encasing it into a tight area, which creates heat naturally, and they use that heat energy to essentially power turbines. Okay, so more or less, you've got steam power, but instead of burning coal, they're encasing a radioactive isotope. Okay, but to call that nuclear power and to somehow equate that as proof of nuclear bombs is just ridiculous. It's absurd. And yeah, so the idea that Hawaii or Japan was under some sort of a nuclear bomb threat, I feel is ridiculous. Now, of course, you can have nuclear meltdown, so they call it, in a nuclear power plant, so to speak. But that is a far cry from from a nuclear bomb. Okay. Now, I watched a documentary recently about the babushkas in Russia that they went back to Chernobyl. Years. That's where they grew up. That's where they lived, and they had to evacuate. A lot of them were there, like working in the area when the whole thing melted down. And these babushkas, these old women, are living into their 90s, and they're not. They may be radioactive a bit, but it's not like making them grow an ear on their tongue or something. Well, the way that the babushkas were telling it is there's a 10 kilometer zone around the ground zero area that they cannot live in. Like you can't live there. But just 10 kilometers away, they're actually repopulating their villages that they grew up in. Now the thing is though, basically none of the men have survived. So for whatever reason, this radioactive decay or poisoning or whatever appears to affect men worse than it does the women, because these women are really old. I mean, they're old, but they're picking potatoes out of the ground and mushrooms out of the ground right there in Chernobyl, and they're living into their 90s. So, I don't know. Look at look at Nagasaki and Hiroshima as well.
They just don't. You need a male and a female for the next generation. You can't just have one or the other. I suppose you have test tube babies, can't you? But you know what I mean. Generally, that's how most of us are doing it. So if you just eradicate one of them one way or another, there won't be any children.
Yeah, that's true. Well, and they're playing that game psychologically as well. I believe with certain things in the water, subliminal programming, long-term mass mind control manipulation by the media. I strongly believe that it is sort of conducive, that their narrative is conducive to making people homosexual. Okay. And of course, this is going to have an impact. Yeah, that's going to have an impact on future populations because, of course, I know it sounds very, it sounds very intolerant, but homosexual people cannot reproduce naturally. As intolerant as that sounds, it is the damn truth. So, you know.
What they're doing is they're playing stuff in front of you, right? So they're getting you to fancy what you think is a woman, but is actually a man. So they're trying to get you to fancy your own sex. That's what they're doing by the way all these cases are. What it is you'll be looking at it and you'll be going, that's not a man, that's a woman. That's not a woman, that's a man. Do you know what I mean? Everybody's playing the opposite sex in these crime watch things. They're all like the man is the woman is the man. All of them. They've like cross-gendered the things.
Oh my God. I've been working on my wife on this topic for about a year and a half, 2 years now, because she thinks that I'm crazy for saying this, but it's funny how far she's come because today she's in there watching a documentary about Justin Bieber's uh, bodyguards, and she's like, I don't know, but I think Justin Bieber is a chick. And I'm like, dude, I've been telling you that for years, but you said I was crazy. But now it's finally sinking in. And I haven't been using any subliminals on her. This is just, she came up with this on her own. And as a matter of fact, yesterday she was watching a movie called The Enfield Haunting. I think that was up there in North London, a little bit closer to you. And the woman that plays the wife, she's like, dude, that's a man. And I'm like, yeah, no surprise here because they are putting secret transgenders in the movies.
Can I tell you something? Do you know what's really alarming? Is that I suppose what it is a lot of us are watching a lot of this stuff now on our mobile phones. And so maybe they're getting away with a lot of it because, first of all, it's on a mobile phone. Right now, I bet you, because your camera's off, you're probably looking up, looking down. See, what I mean is you take your eyes off the screen. It could be the children, you're cooking, you're listening to it play on your phone or something, and then you occasionally have a look, so you might not even notice things. And yeah, that's what's happening. People don't realize. I don't think any of them are real. Someone put a link that there's a place now where they have, it's called fake trials. They're making them for us.
Well, here's a crazy one. So I saw this on Transpocalypse Now channel a couple weeks ago. Great channel. Used to be Mystery. Mystery's channel got taken down, and so he started another channel, and it's doing very well. But so basically, the thing is the United States women's soccer team won the World Cup this year, okay, which is a big deal. But the thing is that the entire United States women's soccer team, they're transgendered men. So, oh my God, like, wow. Like,
That's it. Listen, the news, right? I was watching it, and what it was is they called her Angel, but Angel looked like a lady, a woman, but she had an Adam's apple moving up and down on her neck, a big one that you could see. This is what I'm saying, because people aren't watching their screens properly, or they're watching it on a mobile. They're not noticing it. It's just the way they're doing it. Everybody can be.
It's what we see.
Everybody can be what they want to be. I'm not talking about that. Whatever you feel you are, that's you. What I'm talking about is this is a program. This is an agenda. This is something that's being done to you, whether you want it or not. You're being you're being told that this is reality when it isn't. It's being done on purpose.
right. But I think why it's so deceptive is because of what we see. So like, if you're looking at the US women's soccer team, if you're a guy, you're going to be like, oh wow, they have big boobs and nice butts. So, there you go. If you're a woman, you're looking at them like, wow, I'm never going to get hips like that. I should go be a soccer player. All right, you guys call it football, we call it soccer. Um, so that the women are basically being body shamed because, well, women are never going to have hips like a man. It's two completely different skeletal structures, and so that's where I believe you get anorexia and bulimia from. And then you've got men who are lusting after dudes who are basically transgendered, and so it creates sexual confusion on both ends. And so yeah, there's extremely
Do you see what I mean? It's not. I'm not picking out what you are and what sexuality you feel. Just the way that they're doing this.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, and here in America, now they're pushing it on younger and younger kids where there's elementary schools that are basically forcing young children to learn about, oh man, just terrible things. I'm not even going to mention them, but as par for the course, like they have to learn about all this really bizarre and devious sexual preference before they're even old enough to understand or really even be interested in that sort of thing. And they're basically telling little kids that today you could be Johnny, but tomorrow you could be Susie if that's how you feel, and nobody can tell you otherwise, and it's basically a crime if they do. So you know
We need to get back to grassroots of letting children, for goodness sake, be children until they get to 8 or 10 or something. Without, I know you can't make it law and you can't be, dominant on it, but what a shame the emphasis wasn't more for children. Without our children, we don't have anything. Without children, imagine this, like that story. If you beat a child up, tell it it's ugly, useless, and stupid, how is that child going to grow up? But if you tell this one, you're lovely, I love you, and yeah, it's okay, you can be angry because it was my fault, I made a mistake, and that child learns a totally different way of relating and emotions. That child grows up to be totally different to the other one. The other one is our narcissistic society. I'm sorry, everybody's looking like the other child. The only way we can do it is to change it in our consciousness. It has to start now, guys. I sound like a party political broadcast, don't I?
Well, that's the thing, though. I mean, that's really all we can do is we can make small changes in our own life to the people around us, and if we're lucky enough to have a platform on these social media sites where lots of people view, which they really don't, at least in my case. But if you're lucky enough to have that, then you can plant seeds of change in people's minds by the truth. The truth is the only antidote to this sort of deception. And so, in that regard, it's I'm very optimistic and positive as long as you don't make your goals too lofty, because again, they just have ways of putting lids on these things, putting the cats back into the bag somehow. They've got the ways and the mechanisms that they use to do this to a T. I mean, it is a well-oiled machine. They have the biggest microphone that most people are, tuned into. And so
the saddest thing is the people don't know that they don't know. That's the sad bit.
Yeah. Yeah, but we know that they don't know that they don't know. So, it's sort of our job to let them know that we know.
Yeah, we get quite persecuted though, don't we, along the way for knowing a little bit more.
To a T. I mean, it is a well-oiled machine. They have the biggest microphone that most people are, tuned into. And so
the saddest thing is the people don't know that they don't know. That's the sad bit.
Yeah. Yeah, but we know that they don't know that they don't know. So, it's sort of our job to let them know that we know.
Yeah, we get quite persecuted though, don't we, along the way for knowing a little bit more than them, because we don't know everything either, but we understand and can see it. Some of us can see it and some of us can't. Can I just say we've been going for, and I said that we go a bit shorter now, so we've been going for over an hour, but just to end this hangout, John, is there anything you'd like to say for the next 10 minutes or something, about where you're going, what you're doing, or your channel?
Yeah, no, I'm just glad to be back on YouTube, man.
You're going to be back streaming a bit more now, so that's good, because I did, unfortunately, it's actually been very quiet this evening.
Yeah, I'm here.
Hey,
I've been wrapping presents up for the baby shower, sorry. I've been listening though. So, what I love about you, John, is you're always positive, even though, like everyone, we have problems and stuff. And it's just nice that you bring a bit of positivity. So, thank you for that.
Well, that's the only way to do it, because I'll tell you, if you let the little things or even the big things get you down, it's going to be one hell of a long road to hoe, because life is filled with those sort of things. So yeah, no, you gotta keep your chin up and keep on trucking, right?
That's what I said at the beginning, John, that, we've been friends, like, and even before, like, there was some certain times. For the recording, John, we'll say goodbye, but when I stop it, we'll say goodbye to each other after the recording. I hate it when we say goodbye and then they've gone before you've had a chance to say goodbye properly. Anyway, but for the recording,
Okay.
thank you so much for coming on. It's been a while, but I've really enjoyed talking to you.
Yeah, I have as well, John. Not listening to you, obviously, but yeah. Just wanted to say quickly before Karen turns the recording off, I love you, and I hope everything goes all right for you in the future. And thank you for coming on and talking to us.
Oh, well, thank you. And yeah, it's always a pleasure. And I really enjoy speaking with you guys. And yeah, love you guys, love your viewers and your listeners. And hopefully you can build this channel up bigger and better than the other one ever was. And anything I can do to help, within reason, let me know. Not gonna go lining up anyone and shooting them. So.
Oh, bless your cotton socks. Bless your cotton socks. Anyway, thank you. Goodbye, everybody. Mwah.
Bye.
Love you all.